What's up, guys? Today I just want to get into a little information about the James Cook situation in Buffalo and the Tee Higgins franchise tag situation in Cincinnati. Gonna try to keep this pretty quick. I just want to give a little bit of my opinions and just touch base on what's going on with these situations, because on one hand, you have a young, up and coming star in Buffalo who maybe possibly you can justify getting $15 million a year, but I just don't see it. And then on the other hand, you have a star, potential wide receiver one, being franchise tagged again for the second time in his prime. So let's get into it. Now, as a Bills fan, does he deserve $15 million a year? I mean, in terms of how much he means to the team, I can say yes. But in terms of production and the value he brings, not necessarily. $15 million a year would make him the second or third highest paid running back in the NFL right now. Cut. And with that being said, I mean, it's tough because you got guys like Alvin Kamara, Christian McCaffrey, Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, even Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson. Those guys play a lot more than 45% of the snaps, and they're not really liabilities in pass coverage and pass protection, which James Cook is. He's not the greatest pass blocker, and he's also really limited in terms of his pass blocking ability. So to pay a guy who's playing 45% of the snaps $15 million a year would be kind of tough to reconcile with. So with that being cut. So with that being said, possible trade options for James would be a little more my cup of tea. And with how strong this running back class is this year, I think that would be the best way to go. So if we can trade James Cook, I don't mean we, but Buffalo can trade James Cook and get a second and a fifth, a third and a fourth, a second and a future fourth, something to where they can dip back into the draft and take another running back. You have guys like Omarion Hampton, Quinshon Judkins, Travion Henderson, Taj Brooks, Caleb Johnson, Dylan Sampson. Those are all guys who have similar skill sets to James Cook. Some also might be a little bigger than James Cook. So him wanting to do this holdout right now of all times, I don't think suits him too well. But if he's learning from his brother, he's going to try to take all the money he can this first time around. So Buffalo has guys like Ray Davis right now, and Ty Johnson is not under contract. When you look at the free agent market, you also have guys like Najee Harris, who, I wouldn't be in favor of, but for a value option, if you can bring him in pretty cheap, trade James and get that draft pick. Now we have a vet presence in there with a second-year running back and a rookie running back. I think that's a lot more favorable. You got J.K. Dobbins, and you got Javonte Williams, who is that bigger back that proved to have pass-catching ability. Places in terms of trades for James, you got Dallas. You got, you don't want to do New England, but you got New England. You got the Chargers. You got the Raiders. You got tons of teams, honestly. Washington, Commanders, Giants, the Panthers even, the Saints. There's a lot of possibilities as to where you can send James and what you can get back for him. Now, that's just one piece of the pie, because now you would also have to deal with the repercussions of trading James. How would that affect your locker room? How would that affect player morale when, some guys say, oh, well, it looks like it's coming up on a contract year for me, and they might trade me. That's never really something you want to cut. That's never really something you want to deal with when you got a lot of guys who you've drafted. But for teams like Buffalo, who have been pretty successful in those mid-rounds of the draft, if James isn't budging on something like 11.5 mil, 10 million, the highest I would go absolutely is 11.5 million. Like I said, the dude plays 45% of the snaps. That's not going to cut it for 15 million. I'm sorry, dog. But 11 mil, 10 mil, 10.5 million, 3-year contract, 10.5 million a year. It gives him a chance to hit free agency again at 28 or 27, 28 years old. If he's not willing to take that, then I think they move on. And, there's a lot of talent coming up in the draft, even going into the 4th and 5th round, possibly with guys like Cam Scatterbo, DJ Giddens, Devin Neal. Like, there is a ton of running back production to be found in the draft, and a lot of guys who look like they can contribute this year. And, while the Eagles have proved that you can ride a running back to the Super Bowl, the Chiefs proves that you don't have to. So, there's many ways to win. There's many other guys out there. And I think if James Cook isn't willing to budge, then I think the Bills trade him either during the draft or sometime before the draft. Whether you can use that in a package to get a different player, or you can just... I think James Cook has a low second round value, early third round value. That would leave Buffalo with a first round, 2 second rounds, or possibly 3 second rounds in the third round, and 4 fourth round picks. Tons of swings to take in the draft at a running back. Tons of running back production to be found in the draft. So today I want to get into the topic of why Cincinnati franchise tagging Tee Higgins again this year is going to be a mistake. And when I mean a mistake, not a mistake for Cincinnati, because I'm pretty sure they're going to franchise tag him and then trade him, but just a mistake. And this is once again going to shed light on the issues of the franchise tag. Now, I believe it is okay to franchise tag a player once in his career after their contract is expired, and you want to hang on to them for one more year, or you have plans on trading him. But the fact that there can be a second tag after you have been tagged initially the first time, I think is going to cause a lot of problems going forward in the NFL for 2 reasons. One, I'm pretty sure the collective bargaining agreement and the Players Association, they're going to take a look at this and start to see that players' primes are being wasted on teams that have no true ability to contend. For example, what the Giants did to Saquon last year. Thankfully, they've only tagged him once last year, but they did waste a year of his prime, age 27. And 2, it doesn't bring much value for teams that are willing to trade for these players. Like, for example, if I'm going to trade for Tee Higgins and I know he's been franchise tagged for the second time, I know the third time you're going to get rid of him, you can't do it. And I know you're not going to sign him. So why would I send you a first, second, third round pick for him when I can just wait you out? Yeah, I get an older Tee Higgins, but I also get a better deal because I'm not going to pay him as much because he's older. So, I think this whole franchise tag thing is going to start to rear its head in a negative light And a lot of players are going to start being extremely reluctant to play on the franchise tag. They're going to start faking injuries. It's going to start creating conflicts in locker rooms, and it's going to ruin a lot of teams. Not only does this, not really bode well for team morale for Cincinnati, but, what does that say to guys like Jamar Chase, who is obviously looking for a new contract after his holdout last season? Trey Hendrickson, who is looking for a new contract? What does that say for guys like Chase Brown, who at some point is going to need a new contract? Guys like, just great players that play for Cincinnati and then just get franchise tagged or pushed away. You know what I mean? Like, what does that say for team morale going forward if everyone who is up for a contract in Cincinnati at some point, more likely than not, will get franchise tagged? Like, the reason some organizations are stuck where they are is because of bad business practices and not operating in good faith. And I think that this whole franchise tag thing, it needs to be looked at. Like, players should not be getting franchise tagged on back-to-back seasons by the same team. Like, that just, you might as well sign them 2-3 year deals if you're going to franchise tag them. At least you can get better rates in what you're paying, and a player who's more motivated and feels like, you guys actually want him there, instead of using them as bargaining chips or, just to show dominance and power over them. Just give them a deal, 2-year, 3-year deals. If you're going to franchise tag them for 2 years, like that's something I never really understood. It's more power to the owners in the league than it is the players. And that's why football players are stuck in the situations they're in for their pays. Running backs this year, I'm so glad that the running backs this year were able to basically fight the system and say, no, you guys need us. Because without us, you're one-dimensional, and what happens to one-dimensional teams? They get handled, usually without a problem. Cincinnati was very one-dimensional. Hey, we either going to sling the rock to Jamar Chase, because Tee Higgins, he ain't in. Tee Higgins is barely playing, and Chase Brown is more of a receiving back than he is a between-the-tackles kind of back. So we're going to sling the rock, and our defense can't stop anybody, so we're going to put up 40. And teams were like, okay, so we're going to put up 42 or 44 or 46. And that's how Cincinnati ended up with a 9-8 record, because they were 100% one-dimensional. They couldn't stop other teams' offenses. And there just wasn't enough wrinkles in their game. And the guy they're franchise tagging for what I'm assuming is about $26 million was barely playing. Some of that could be to true injury. Some of that could just be strictly for him saving himself for another team, because that's what I would do if I had any sniff of me getting franchise tagged a second time. Damn, coach, I think my back hurts. I think my hamstring hurts. My ankle hurts. Can't go this week. That's exactly what I would do, because at that point, I need to look out for myself. And guess what? You franchise tag me, so that's a hard tag at whatever price that is. I'm getting that paper. Between James Cook wanting $15 million a year, Tee Higgins getting franchise tagged for a second year, there's going to be a lot going on this year in the NFL. A lot of change and a lot of things to look into. So I'll catch you guys with some more news whenever I get the chance, but stay tuned, stay dangerous. Later.